On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, since we now know the matchup, Keith and I discussed this as possibly the worst matchup for the 76ers. Yes, the Celtics hosting the Sixers in round two. Is it the worst matchup, or is it something that will work in their favor? We'll dive into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, you are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-hosts and partners, always from the Inquirer.com, Sixers beat writer Keith Pompey. What's up, Keith? Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday. Friday. Whatever they say.
Friday, and we actually have some basketball that will be underway on Monday. So we have a lot to talk about here today for the folks, bringing this one a little bit later after, we had to do our podcast yesterday. And we have a lot to talk about, man. Joe Mazzulla, rookie head coach, he struggled in round one against the 7th seed Atlanta Hawks. Is that something that could be, a little advantage there for Doc Rivers on the other side for the 76ers? We'll dive into that a little bit later. We'll also get into what chance does this team actually have, and if they do have a chance to win, what do they need to do to beat this team that they lost to 3 times during the regular season? And at first, we'll get started with, again, this potentially being the worst possible matchup. But before we do that, we want to thank you all for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. All right, Keith. Worst possible matchup. 1-3 record the Sixers were against the Celtics during the season. They lost to them 3 different ways, and they beat them in the 4th time, needing 52 points from their big fella. They probably should have won game 3, to be perfectly honest with you. Probably should have won game 3, but they lost by 3. Jason Tatum hit the shot in Philadelphia, we know. Embiid 52, final game. It was a big performance, but nobody else really did anything. He scored 52. The team scored 51 in that win. But they have beaten them. They have shown that they can compete with them, but they've also shown that they can lose to this team by losing 3 times. Last season, they were 2-2 during the regular season. So with this certain iteration of this Boston Celtics team, they have beaten them a couple of times. They know each other very well. The Celtics know the Sixers. The Sixers know the Celtics. But you feel that this is the worst possible matchup for the basketball team.
Yeah, I think you're being a little nice. Like you're saying,
I laid out facts.
They should. Yeah, you're not. I don't think they ever had a chance of winning any of those games. I mean, I know they were up 16 to one time.
In game 3?
In game 3 they were up 16.
Should have won that game.
They should have, would have, could have. But the thing is, it was like they didn't. And the thing is, here's the deal. And the reason why I'm saying this is, I'm looking at this game, and you look at one team, like you see it. It happens a lot, and it used to happen a lot with the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, where they gave a team hope, and that team was like playing hard, thinking that they can do it, and then all of a sudden they would flip a switch, and then they would turn it on. Now, first of all, you may say it. I mean, the Sixers made some coaching blunders. The bench was trash in that game. Outside of Joel Embiid, they didn't do anything. Like Tobias Harris, the 3rd game, he was hot, and then afterwards they start icing them out, and they went back and did what they normally do. James Harden had numbers, but he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. So, this is the same recipe for whenever they lose games, right? The bench struggles. Tobias gets lost in the second half. Maxey stands around. Joel is like beasting everybody, but then James can't make shots, right? And then there's some poor lack adjustments that happen. But when I look at it, it's like it was kind of like Boston, for the most part, was able to do whatever they wanted to against the Sixers. They were able to turn it on. They were able to do whatever. And you look at the matchup, we're going to talk about Joe Mazzulla in the last segment, but some of his bench guys and some of the guys that he had, like you compare their bench to the Sixers bench, and this is the deepest bench that the Sixers had since Doc Rivers has been here. It just doesn't compare. It doesn't. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And that's not a knock. It's just that's how deep Boston and how how good those guys they have coming off the bench are. I just feel like the 76ers can't defend them, the big guys in the perimeter when they get out there. That's something we talked about for weeks, and that's a struggle. I also felt like whenever Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown wanted to turn it on, they could. Even when Jason Tatum was struggling. I just look at this team athletically. They got two quality wings who can score. Now, I know Jason Tatum plays the four, but he's actually a wing, right? You same thing with Jaylen Brown. Just when we look at the 76ers, you say to yourself, who do they struggle against? They struggle against wings who can create their own shots. And right now, we got two of the best scoring wings in the NBA, right? Then you say, well, what else do they struggle against? Well, they struggle when other teams have bigs who could go out in the perimeter and get lost and who can knock down threes. That's what Boston has. And then we say, well, what else do they struggle against? Well, they struggle against teams that have quality benches. They struggle. So when I look at this, I'm saying to myself, like, this is the worst possible matchup for the Sixers because, the alternative would have been the Atlanta Hawks. The alternative would have been, let's say, the New York Knicks. It would have been the Miami Heat. And the Knicks and the Heat, they split 2-2 with those two teams. But at the same time, you feel like the 76ers could defeat those teams. And I'm not just saying this about the East. I think Boston is the worst possible matchup against the Sixers with anybody in the NBA. And I feel like if the Sixers are able to win this series, that you got to make them a favorite, if not the favorite, to win the finals. But I just feel like this is a bad matchup for the 76ers.
Well, you mentioned it,
Worst matchup.
and I know how you feel, and you've laid it all out. You felt that the winner of this series will be the representative in the Eastern Conference for the NBA Finals. So that's a big thing. That's a big deal, right there for you to say something like that about this basketball team. And while they are a tough matchup, and they probably are the worst possible matchup, I do think that they will compete against this team in this series. I think that it will not be like we saw in the first two games. I'll say that because in game 3 and game 4, those two teams really went at it. And I don't think it will be like it was in games 1 and 2. I think this is going to be a long series. I think that the Sixers will maybe stun us a little bit and have us maybe coming on this podcast, Keith, afterwards and saying, wow, that was actually a pretty good win. Now, any playoff win is a good win against a team like the Boston Celtics that you just laid out as the first worst possible matchup. So I do think that they can actually compete. I don't disagree with you that this is the worst matchup. This was the one that we were all worried about. Felt they matched up pretty favorably against the Milwaukee Bucks, or just simply pretty well against the Milwaukee Bucks, where they can certainly knock off the number 1 seed. And now, when you look at the final 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, not looking past the Celtics, but just simply looking at the other 2 that are still alive in New York and Miami, yeah, between these 4 teams, forget about the West, Boston is the worst possible matchup for the Sixers. All of that said, I do think that they will compete in this series and give themselves a chance to win it. Not unlike what we've seen in the past. I can't say that it's going to be like Toronto, Keith, in 2020. 2019. I can't say that it's going to get to game 7. It's going to take a miraculous shot at the very end to knock the Sixers off and prevent them from advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I do think this is going to be a long series. And even though this may be the worst possible matchup, where I agree with you in terms of the team and what they have, I think they will compete. I think they're going to come out here and be highly motivated against this basketball team, especially after seeing what happened with the Atlanta Hawks. And while that's a totally different series against a totally different roster, you might find some things that are in there that you may be able to use to your benefit to maybe make up for some of those things that cause someone like you or others to think that this is a really, really, really tough matchup for the 76ers. So I don't disagree with you on your premise. I look at them a little more favorably in terms of how they'll compete and their chances of winning this series. And I don't know if you want to wait till Monday for us to actually give our series prediction. That's cool too, for us to do that. But just to say it here, I think they'll compete, and this is going to be a long series.
I mean, you know what? I think they'll lose. I mean, I just do. I
Oh,
mean,
that out there. Okay.
I gotta look at it and say how many games. I
Yeah.
just don't feel like I don't know, like you in a way you like anything can happen. It can,
Sure.
but the Sixers
Basketball.
just got to be it's basketball. But I'm looking at that Miami series. I'm looking at a lot of young athletic wings who put pressure on the Boston Celtics defensively, right? A lot of young athletic wings. It basically forced the Celtics to
You talking about
alter.
Atlanta?
I mean, excuse me.
Okay.
Well, yeah, Atlanta.
Okay.
But Atlanta actually forced the Celtics to alter their starting lineup, so to speak, to get Derek White out there, additional guards, because of just because how athletic these guys are. Um, you know, I don't know. And see, the thing is, Trae Young in Game 6, he went 0 for 7 from the field. You know, to me, if James Harden doesn't make shots, he's going to be like Trae Young, going 0 for 7 from the
7
field.
for 3.
Yeah, from 3. Now, the problem is when Trae Young is cooking, he's tough to guard. And
The difference there though is that James Harden will have Joel Embiid.
true, but the thing is true, but we're talking
He
about
doesn't have
Joel Embiid with a
doesn't
knee
have
brace.
that type of post presence or just that type of body there that they're going to have to account for.
Yeah,
Even
we're talking about Joel Embiid with a knee brace, and then Joel Embiid also
you still got to
averaged
defend
30.
him though. You still
You
have to
gotta
defend
defend
him.
him. You
He's,
gotta defend him.
he's
You
not
gotta
Clint
defend
Capella.
him.
He's not
You
Clint
gotta
Capella or a Kongwu.
true, but we talking about they always had to defend Joel. Joel averages for his career, he averages 28 points against them. This season, he averaged 36,
And
and
it
they
was
lost
completed
3 of
by
those
that
games.
52, right?
Yeah, and they lost. He had to have 52 and 13 for them to beat them without they starters. Like, come on, like without they starting center, like they had no offense, but like you saying to yourself, we're gonna talk about the coach again, but we're gonna say like, yo, y'all ain't doubling Joel. Like you got a backup big on him. What's the light skinned dude who went to Tennessee?
Grant Williams.
Yeah, he had Grant Williams guarding him
Mm-hmm.
1-on-1. And Joel was just like,
Layup.
you know what I mean? Like he was killing the dude. So like it was just like, yo, like, and you barely won that game when you got Joel giving your backup 52, giving the backup dude the business 52, and they barely won. So I'm just saying, like, I get what you're saying, the optimism and all that, but I got to see completely different. Like George Niang, like I love George, that's my dude, but they attack him whenever he gets in, right? Jalen McDaniels, he was getting attacked when he got in there. I mean, it got to a point where they was attacking Shake Milton that he might not even be in the rotation. He ain't going to play,
He's not going to be out
right?
there.
Paul Reed, they was using his mistakes against him. So, and although those games were close, it was like they was like, okay, let's see what this guy going to do in this one. And it's like, all right, let's do it a couple times. Let's just wait until we play him in the playoffs. Like we don't want to show anything. So that to me, that's why I think they're gonna have a tough time against them.
Well, it certainly is an interesting matchup and one that the Boston Celtics have had the advantage over the Sixers this season. And part of that, Keith, is what we wanted to talk about, continue to talk about. All of that. Now I have to ask you, how can they win this series? When we get back, next segment right here, Locked On 76ers. And I also have to tell you that this show is, in fact, sponsored by our good folks at BetterHelp. Yes, BetterHelp. Again, BetterHelp there is there for you. Not better health, BetterHelp. HELP. So again, this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever had some times where you needed to really just talk to somebody? Sure, you can talk to your friends and your family, your loved ones that will always try to steer you in the right direction, always being honest and upfront, but sometimes they'll also tell you what you want to hear. And when you're dealing with those, you're having some personal problems, some personal experiences, maybe work, also that are really affecting your everyday life. Well, you need to get to know yourself a little bit better. And that is by having, you could be a lifelong process of figuring that out, especially because we're always growing and changing when it comes to the examples that I just gave you. That therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way that we do until we talk some things through. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on a journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Listen, I've benefited from therapy in the past. I'm sure many of you out there have already done so. Maybe you want to pass this on along to, again, some friends and some loved ones that may need it, because it's always there for you. It's always effective. There are always things that you can find in it when talking to someone if you're going through something. Or maybe you're just having a really good point of your life and you just want to openly speak with someone, but not share that, again, with some of your closer family and friends. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba.
So now I want to talk about the Nissan Athlete of the Week, and it hasn't changed. I mean, I'm still giving it to Trae Young. We gave it to him a couple days ago. As you know, the Sixers haven't played in a week, and Trae is the reason why that Joel Embiid is able to get some rest, and why the Sixers are. And I know Sixers are tired. Some of them, Doc Rivers probably wishes. Part of them wishes that they were playing tomorrow on Saturday. But then the other part of them wishes that, hey, I want to get a healthy Joel Embiid. So I'm giving it to Trae Young for extending the Boston Celtics Atlanta Hawks first round series to 6 games. And this is why he gets it. Because he is brilliantly fierce, just like the Aria. He's fiercely elegant. He's stunningly powerful, elegantly powerful, and he delivers when needed, right? He didn't do it yesterday, but he delivers basically when needed, right? So the 2023 Nissan Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com.
Trae Young was tremendous, even though he's on my nerves a lot. I wouldn't want that guy playing on my team. You're right. He did extend that series and help out Joel Embiid and the 76ers. So we thank everybody here from Locked On 76ers for making your first listen every day. We thank Trae Young for the player of the week. Every day is tomorrow on the show. Well, that will actually be on Monday, where we will preview game 1 of the second round semifinal matchup between the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division hated rivals, the Sixers and the Celtics. Make sure you stay tuned for that one. Really appreciate it. All right, Keith, we got to jump into all of those things that more so that you said, because as you said, you look at this one and you don't feel as optimistic maybe as I do or some of the Sixer fans out there. And when you look at this one, though, if you could spin it and put on your analyst hat as a beat writer, as a guy who's seen this, when you see the things that haven't worked, what are the things that they need to do to correct those things to make sure that they do, in fact, make this a series, if not beat the Celtics in this second round?
They got to do a better job of getting Tobias Harris involved for 4 quarters. That has to happen. You also, we talk about Tyrese Maxey basically being struggling, missing shots and everything. But for the most part, he was really like a bystander too. The guy who didn't get a lot of shot attempts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like whenever he got them, they were bad shots, right? If that makes sense to you. And a lot of times that comes with rushing, like you're not getting the ball and then you're trying to hurry up and make something happen. Um, and like the one game he had, like he scored like 8 of his points or 6 of his 8 points in like the fourth quarter. Like, the game was like, come on now, the game was just about over. But all I'm saying is like in order for them to win, you got to have Trae Young on fire, attacking the defense, putting pressure on the defense. And what that'll do is that'll open things up for others. You also got to get Tobias engaged, keep him engaged. You know what I mean? I think that Tobias can be the X factor in this series if you keep him engaged. The problem is what happens is when you typically see the 76ers is always a matter of against Boston is a matter of Joel getting his, but everybody else getting freezed out. You can't have that. You can have them score points and have them dominate, but at the same time, you got to get everybody else involved in order to beat this team because that's what they want. They want Joel to run up and down the score, up and down the court, score as many points as he can, and then at the end of the game, we're going to beat you by 5-7. That's what they want. So I think in order for them to win, Maxey has to put pressure on the defense and constant pressure on the defense, and Tobias has to stay engaged and be involved in the game.
Do you think what we saw against Brooklyn, where he was featured prominently because of the constant double and triple teams of Embiid, and then that closeout game where he was phenomenal in game number 4, do you think because of that and Embiid having not necessarily struggled, because I'm not going to say he struggled, it was just the attention that he saw, didn't have to score like we're accustomed to seeing against the Nets, that maybe that opened their eyes a little bit as teammates, not necessarily the coaching staff, but more as teammates, that they will trust Tobias Harris to have some success against the Boston Celtics in this series to get him.
I don't, but I think it's all up to Embiid, really. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I
Well,
mean, yeah, you
3
can say
games he
that,
played well with
but,
Embiid
but
on the floor.
yeah, but again, it's also like we talked about before. It's kind of like different horses for different courses or different like strategies. Like, I think that had Brooklyn would have said, "All right, we just going to do some switching, and you know what, Joel, whatever you do, you do." Tobias and I wouldn't have been getting the ball that much. You understand what I'm saying? I think Joel would have been getting his 30 and 20 rebounds and just beasting everybody. And I think that's what Boston is hoping because they're hoping that Joel's gonna be like, oh, is this easy? Oh, okay, I'm going in there. And then he's not going to pass the ball to Tobias and them in certain situations because it's just going to be a layup for him or whatever. So you know what? Like if they trap him and they do stuff, yeah. But outside of that, Joel has to consciously say, "I got to get my teammates involved," because it's just going to be different. And like, let's face it, and nothing against people, they're already hyping this thing up where this is going to be the second time in NBA history in a conference semifinals that you have two 30-point scorers going against each other. Back in the day, it was Oscar Robertson and Wilt Chamberlain when he was with the Sixers, right, in the 67 playoffs. Now it's Jason Tatum and Joel. So like Joel's going to want to be a gamer. He's going to want to play. He's going to want to show everybody that his knee isn't bothering him, right? So like, it's just consciously he's going to have to settle down and decide.
Well, there are multiple ways of still being Joel and showing them, as you just said, that his knee is not a problem and it doesn't have to be 30. You don't have to match Jason Tatum with 30 if, to your point, you're getting the other guys involved and they're getting their shots, you're protecting the basketball, all of those things. You don't have to. You don't have to. And quite frankly, Keith, he opened that can when he said after game 3, I think it was, where he had 14 and 10, 14, 10, 14, whatever, double figures in scoring and rebounds. And he said, people think I want to score 30 plus points. I don't have to. I actually like winning this way. And I would be okay scoring 4 points as long as we get the win. Now, I don't believe that. However, he opened it up. So if he doesn't, to your point, kind of acquiesce to what he said and what the team needs in that moment, then yeah, he will be called out for it. But Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey are going to be big keys to this series, no doubt. No doubt. All right, final segment on the other side. We'll get into Joe Mazzulla because that's a rookie head coach, man. That rookie head coach, well, he's got a lot to show after extending that with a 7 seed in the Atlanta Hawks to a game 7, allowing that to get there. We'll decide how he's going to match up, or talk about how he's going to match up against the veteran in Doc Rivers as they take the floor on Monday. Final segment right here, Locked On 76ers. Both are trying to end up as championship teams. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs just the right fit. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around, not the second. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Very simple. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Keith, Joe Mazzulla had a fantastic season, ending up with the second best record in the NBA. But I also know, just from some Celtics fans in my life and listening to some of the other things, reading things during the season, when it came to Joe Mazzulla and his coaching strategy in a lot of different ways, Celtics fans not all that thrilled with his decision making on game day in tough situations. Now, to your point, early on, they had 3 wins this season against the Sixers, and it worked out pretty favorably for Joe Mazzulla overall. But he did maybe show some weaknesses in that series against Quinn Snyder, another veteran head coach, like we're going to see here with Doc Rivers going head to head against Mazzulla, that may be some shortcomings in there that could go in the favor of the 76ers. Is this something where we look at the Sixers and say they may have an advantage there with the head coaching matchup?
Yeah, they definitely do. I think they do. Yeah. Not only that, I think that they also have a advantage with the coaching, but then also you got to realize some of the they have a particular coach on the staff who was a Celtics assistant. So he's familiar with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, again, they were young players when he was there, but at the same time, they have it. I mean, I look at Joe Mazzulla, and he improved from the beginning of the season. But in the beginning of the season, there was a particular game where the opposing team went on an 18-0 run, and he didn't call a timeout. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, he's improved, but there was a time where he just didn't do it. And it was like, oh, I want them to play through it. I looked at the one game where I think it was game 5, because this one ended in 6 games. But it was game 5, and he was doing offense, defense. The problem is he has 2 starting lineups, right? So one starting lineup is when you have Derek White at the 2 guard, and you move Jaylen Brown to the 3, right? And you got Al Horford starting at center, and you have Jason Tatum at the 5, right? Marcus Smart is the 1. Well, the other one is where everybody slides down, and Derek White comes out, and you have Robert Williams playing the 5, and right. So, but to me, it was one of those things where he kept going offense, defense with those
Mm-hmm.
guys.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is Robert Williams was grabbing all the rebounds and taking it
Mm-hmm.
up. And I'm saying to myself, like, yo, dude, do you have like too much? Like, are you thinking too much? Y'all trying to close this game
Mm-hmm.
out. I mean, the game was close, and he was doing that. Another thing is we talk about Grant Williams. Like Grant Williams was a guy who is a quality reserve, and he didn't get a lot of burn in that first series. So you're saying to yourself, like, yo, what is this guy doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, what is he doing? They also got shooters. You didn't see them out there, like on the big guy. So it was, to me, like you said, the coaching was a little, I'm not going to say suspect, but you could just tell that he's a young guy going through it. And I think he was overthinking a lot
Relied on his
in
talent
this.
too much, and maybe the coaching and just letting it be what it was simply got in his way. And that was a lot of what I would read and hear about him throughout the season. We only saw him the 4 games where we really focused against the Sixers. So not much there, except for that game 3 where I thought the Sixers made some really good runs in that game against Philadelphia. They ultimately came back and beat the Sixers, but I thought there were really some things there. They went with the strategy, and we've seen it before with smaller defender, and they just throw a lot of guys at you with Grant Williams, to your point, where Embiid dropped to 52. But yeah, this could be a big key here as a rookie coming into the second round, especially, again, that pressure that might be on him. Just these guys hear things. You know better than I. They hear things. And him being a coach as a first timer, as the head coach, sure, he was on the bench last season with Ime Udoka running things, but that's different when you slide over to that big seat. Now you're in the second round, and they want you to, expecting you to get back to the NBA Finals, especially now that the path is going through either Boston or Philadelphia when home court, since Milwaukee is out. So this is going to be key. We saw some things where Quinn Snyder was able to coach his team up in that series against the Celtics and outcoach Joe Mazzulla in that sense. Doc Rivers, we've seen him. He's done the same thing at times. Look at what he just did against Jacques Vaughn and the Brooklyn Nets, right? Albeit lesser talent, again, he outcoached them. Where we were coming on here in this podcast, Keith, and you're like, Jacques Vaughn lost that game. So we could see it maybe possibly happening again in this upcoming series. And I wouldn't be surprised, because Doc Rivers, as we know, even though we get on for a lot of things, he's a good coach. And we've seen him take advantage of some younger coaches on the other end of the sideline. So we'll see how that one plays out on Monday. Again, we will come back and we will give you our series predictions, and we will give you our thoughts on some major keys in this series as the Eastern Conference semifinals tips off on Monday night. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, every dayers. On Monday, we'll give you a new one to start off the new week for the new series. Keith, you mind letting the good folks know where they can find us?
You can find us wherever you get your podcasts at, and especially on our YouTube channel. When you go to the YouTube channel, I want you to click on the Liberty Bell and you become a new subscriber. Also, what that does is it will give you updates whenever we have new podcasts. But you got to listen to my man D Monday night on the Divine Giving Show.
Friday night.
So it's actually going to be tonight on Friday. It's going to be from 6 to 10. So you can do that from 6 to 10. Also, you can also follow D on Twitter, and that's going to be at Divine Givens, Divine G. It's Divine Givens. I'm talking about the show, Divine G 975. You can follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read the article in the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm just messing with y'all. Inquirer.com.
Absolutely. Everybody, have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Make sure you read Keith's stories on Inquirer.com. He will be, of course, in Boston for the entire series. Games 1, 2, 5, 7, however long they'll be in Boston. Keith will be there having all the great stories. So we appreciate you hanging out with us again all week, especially with no games. But we made it through together. We got it done. And we'll do so again starting on Monday right here on Locked On 76ers. Keith, have a great weekend, man.
Same to you, man. Peace.